Hello everyone, welcome to online Savi video tutorial on hydrology and irrigation. So we are continuing with the module 4. So today we are discussing the different crop seasons of India and the principal crops. So based on the natural seasons and the number of times different crops which are grown on the same land, so the agriculturists have decided the different crop season for different parts of India. Okay, so the consideration they have taken natural season and number of times a different crops grown in the same land. So for southern India, it has been classified into 3 seasons, that is hot weather season, so which ranges from February to May, and here the crops which are grown is that type of a crops which can sustain heat and humid condition. So that type of crops are grown in hot weather crop season. And similarly, the second season is a Kharif season for southern India, and the third is Rabi season. So the Kharif season ranges from June to October, and here the crops are sown at the beginning of monsoon and are harvested in autumn. And in case of Rabi season, it ranges from October to March. The crops are sown in beginning of winter and harvested in spring. And similarly for North India, we have 2 seasons. One is Rabi and Kharif. So Rabi ranges from November to March and Kharif ranges from June to October. And here in case of Kharif, the crops are sown at the beginning of monsoon and harvested in autumn. And other than this, the 3 seasons which are decided based on the natural season for southern and northern India. So we have 8-month season crops and perennial crops, like based on the time duration which the crop will take for their maturity. So based on that, so it is classified into 2 categories, that is 8-month crops and the perennial crop. So 8-month crop, the example is like cotton, so where it takes 8 months for their maturity, and the perennial crops like sugarcane, which requires 12 months for their maturity. And some of the principal crops. So the next is what are the principal crops? See, the crops are classified based on different parameters. So the very first, it is classified based on the agricultural classification. So that is, it is classified into field crops, commercial crops, oil seed crops, horticultural crops, and plantation crops, forage crops, and miscellaneous crops. So what are these field crops? Like wheat, rice, maize, rice, okay, barley, oats, okay, so millet, all those are the field crops. And similarly, the commercial crops like sugarcane, cotton, tobacco, those are the commercial crops. And the example for oil seed crops are like mustard, groundnut, sesame, linseed, castor. So all those are oil seed crops. And horticultural crops are like your fruit crops, vegetable crops, flower crops. And the next classification based on the agriculture is tea, that is plantation crop like tea, coffee, cocoa, coconut, rubber. And forage crops like fodder, grass. Miscellaneous crops are like medicinal crops, aromatic crops, and sericulture crops, and condiments and spices. So all those are the miscellaneous crops, and this is the first classification based on the agriculture. So the second is based on the crop season, like based on the season, as we have Rabi season and Kharif season. Based on that, it is classified as a Rabi crops or winter crops. Okay, so as I have already mentioned, it is sown in autumn, that is October, and harvested in spring, that is March. And the example for Rabi crops are like gram, wheat, barley, mustard, tobacco, linseed, potato. All those are the Rabi crops. And based on the Kharif season, it is classified as a Kharif crops, or it is called as monsoon crops. And these are sown at the beginning of southwest monsoon and harvested in autumn. So the examples are like rice, maize, millet, and spike millet, great millet, pulses, groundnut, all those are the Kharif crops. And similarly, based on the duration of maturity, it is classified as a perennial crop and 8-month crop. So perennial crop means, so those are the which require water throughout the year, like example sugarcane, fruits, vegetables. And similarly, 8-month crops which requires the water for 8 months, the example is cotton. So that is the classification based on season. So the next is based on the irrigation requirement. So based on the irrigation requirement, the crops are classified into dry crops, wet crops, and garden crops. So dry crops are which do not require water for irrigation. Okay, so only whatever the rain is which falls onto the ground surface, that is sufficient for the growth of the plant. So that type of crops is called dry crops. So wet crop means, so other than the rainfall, it requires additional water. That is nothing but irrigation. So those crops are called wet crops. And the garden crops are like your perennial crops which require water throughout the year. So that is a classification based on irrigation requirement. So these are the different crop seasons and the principal crops. So based on different parameters. So in the next class, we'll just continue with the next topic. Thank you all.